if I could just sit down with you and we could talk just one-on-one, and if I could do anything for you, if you would say, John, what is it that you could do for me that would help me to be successful in life? The thing that I would do for you, if I could, is I would teach you how to think correctly. You see, the largest gap between successful and unsuccessful people in life is the thinking gap. I'm not talking about being smart. I'm not talking about an IQ. I'm talking about how you think, how I think. Successful people think differently than unsuccessful people. And the Apostle Paul understood that. I love this passage in Ecclesiastes. Wise thinking leads to right living. Stupid thinking leads to wrong living. How true that is. And in your sermon notes, what I want you to know today is what Paul wants you to know out of Philippians 4, that your attitude, my attitude, is the paintbrush of the mind. In other words, you and I hold the paintbrush in our hand, and we get to determine the picture we put in the mind that we have. I'm going to describe in verses 4 through 7, I'm going to describe a fulfilled life. Now, Paul here in this little short paragraph says, let me describe to you what a fulfilled life looks like. 4 things in your notes. You ready? Number 1, a fulfilled life celebrates God. A person that is living a full life, their heart is full of celebration to God and who He is and what He's done. Number 2, a fulfilled life adds value to people. Number 3, a fulfilled life is one that has the ability to give God your concerns or your worries. In other words, you can take the stress that you have, and you can. My mother's favorite verse was the verse out of Peter where it says, "Cast all of your anxieties on God because He cares for you." A fulfilled life, Paul says, is one that can take the worries and the anxieties and can cast them upon God. And number 4, a fulfilled life experiences God's wholeness, the wholeness of God. Now, he said, this is what a fulfilled life looks like. And then what I love about this passage, starting with verses 8 and 9, he talks to us about how to do this. He says basically to you and me, if you want to have a fulfilled life, you have to fill your mind correctly. Again, going to the passage in Ecclesiastes, wise thinking leads to good living. Stupid thinking leads to bad living. Now, what is the Ecclesiastes writer saying? If you think right, things come out right. If you think wrong, things come out wrong. And Paul says if you want to have a fulfilled life, you've got to fill your mind correctly. And what I love about verses 8 and 9 is he literally is going to show us in a very simple, practical way how to do that. Let's go to the passage. Summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you've learned from me, what you heard and what you saw. Do that, and God, who makes everything work together, will work into your most excellent harmonies. When I was a kid, my parents paid me an allowance to read books. They selected the books, and every day we had to read 30 minutes a day. And one of the things that we read, one of the books we read, was a book by James Allen. And this book, As a Man Thinketh, had an incredible impact upon my life. And here's a statement from the book. The greatest discovery in my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitude. That your life can be changed. My life can be changed if we just change our attitude. The most important real estate, the most important real estate in life is 6 inches between the ears. How we think. I'm going to teach you biblically what it's like to have a great attitude. Are you ready? He said people with a great attitude possess, first of all, a teachable spirit. They're teachable, they're approachable. Look at verse 9. Put into practice what you've learned from me, what you've heard, what you saw, what you realized. Teachability requires repeated, long, hard looks in the mirror. In other words, when we're teachable, we're willing to look hard in the mirror and see us. Teachability allows God and others to speak into our lives. That's what a teachable spirit is. And Paul says, if you want to have the right attitude, let others come and speak into your life. Let me speak into your life. And all Paul is saying is, in this area of attitude, when we want to fix somebody else, it's normally the fact that we need to be fixed. The faults of others are the faults we have ourselves. And we see others not as they are. We see others as we are. And Paul says, if you really want to have a great attitude, have a teachable spirit. Number 2, he says, take responsibility for your attitude. He said, I want you to take responsibility for the attitude that you have. You chose it. Be responsible for it. And he shows us in verses 8 and 9, he shows us how to be responsible for our attitude. He says 3 things. He says, fill your mind on good things. So he says, okay, to take responsibility for your attitude, put good stuff in. You can't put bad stuff in and have good stuff come out. So he said, first responsibility is select what you put in your mind. Then secondly, he says, when you put good stuff in, the second way you fix your attitude is meditate on that good stuff. Meditate on good things in verse 8. And he says you not only meditate on good things, but practice good things. In other words, not only let it go through your mind, but let it get into your actions. And he says, take responsibility for the attitude you have. And if you do those 3 things, if you put good things in your mind, if you meditate on those good things, and then if you practice those good things, the Apostle Paul says, now you are taking responsibility for your attitude. Think about it now. What would happen to you today? What would happen to me today if we'd say, okay, I'm going to be responsible for the mind, for my attitude, and I'm going to do those 3 things. I'm going to fill my mind with good stuff. I'm going to meditate on that good stuff, and I'm going to practice that good stuff. Most of the baloney we have in life, we packed in our own pail. Somebody else didn't slip it in on us. Somebody else isn't doing a little sneakaroo. We did. Paul says people with a great attitude possess a teachable spirit, which means they look in the mirror, they take correction, they take responsibility for their attitude. We already fill your minds, meditate, practice, okay? Number 3, they travel the high road. They travel the high road of life. You see, God chooses what we go through, but we choose how we go through it. And the Apostle Paul in verse 8 does a phenomenal job teaching high road. Look what he says. Fill your minds and meditate on what? The best. That's high road. Not the worst, that's low. The beautiful, that's high. Not the ugly, that's low. Things to praise, that's high. Not things to curse. That's low. In other words, he says, choose to think and choose to meditate and choose to practice the best things in life. There are sins in life that'll keep you outside the house. And those sins are the sins of the spirit and the flesh.
It is your belief system which controls your behavior.
2 people can be going through the very same situation. One has a good attitude, one has a bad attitude. 2 people can be going through a very difficult situation, and one sees faith and stays encouraged and strong, and the other one grabs hold of fear and embraces it until pretty soon they begin to shrink away from life itself. Now, Paul says travel a high road, and there are 3 roads to travel in your notes. The low road, and that's where we treat people worse than they treat us. The middle road, where we treat people the same as they treat us. And the high road, where we treat people better than they treat us. Wow. Number 4, understand the value. W. Clement Stone said there's a little difference in people, but that little difference makes a big difference. The little difference is attitude. The big difference is whether it's positive or whether it's negative.